Simply because his newly pregnant concubine, Xia Huijin, disregarded the biting winter cold, insisted on sending me, about to give birth, to the estate outside the city. Qinghe is frail. The shaman said your zodiac clashes with hers. Once she delivers safely, I'll personally bring you back. I slipped off the fox fur coat he hunted for me himself, and stepped into the swirling blizzard. Later, I heard that the heir apparent, who had always lived in pampered luxury, personally dug 3 feet deep into the snow, all to find his first wife. Xia Huijin entered, covered in snow and wind. He even forgot to close the door outside the window. The snow fell thicker and denser. It made my Tinglong courtyard seem even more desolate. He stood with his arms crossed, his back to me. Qinghe, frightened by a dream of being chased by a tiger, had seen blood and nearly miscarried. He turned, looking at me as if he wanted to speak but held back. As if Qinghe's bleeding were my fault. Qinghe has always been frail, the shaman said. Those born in the year of the tiger clash with her. You'll have to endure staying at the country estate outside the city for a while. You've always been so understanding. Just a few months. Once she delivers safely, I'll come for you. His tone was as light as if discussing some trivial matter, but the court physician said I'm due to deliver in less than a month, and traveling to that estate outside the city. The journey by boat and cart would take 3 days. Besides, Xia Huijin is the same age as me. He's also born in the year of the tiger. Why must I alone make way? I stared at the flickering charcoal fire in the room, saying nothing. Xia Huijin used to dread me getting too close to the charcoal fire. Every winter, he would personally go to the palace and request the finest red brocade charcoal for my use from the Empress Dowager. But now, all that charcoal has been sent to Qinghe's quarters. Seeing my silence, Xia Huijin suddenly softened his tone. Xiao Xue, won't you even yield for a few months? Qinghe is merely a hunter's daughter, innocent and kind by nature. She would never usurp your position as crown prince's consort. I was born in the south. On the day Xia Huijin proposed, he told me, Xiao Xue, I will never betray you in this lifetime. I believed him. It was for that sincerity that I journeyed far north to marry him. Not for any position as crown prince's consort. A sudden gust of cold wind swept in. The charcoal smoke stung my eyes until tears streamed down my face. Xia Huijin flung his sleeves aside. His sword-like brows furrowed. If you refuse, simply say so. There's no need to resort to such tearful, vulgar tactics. It only demeans your station. Gazing at the young master before me, his features unchanged, I laughed bitterly. When Xia Huijin was 12, traveling through Jiangnan, he stumbled and fell into the water. I fought with all my strength to pull him to safety. But I was left with a chronic lung ailment. The slightest whiff of smoke sends me coughing and tearing up. Xia Huijin knows this. Yet now, his heart and eyes are filled only with that concubine. He scarcely remembers my sensitivities. The maid Cilian hurriedly closed the door. And only then did my tears cease. In the blink of an eye, knocking sounded at the door. The crown prince's residence had no other consorts. It was obvious without thinking, Qinghe had arrived. Cilian glanced at me hesitantly. Before she could ask whether to open the door, the matron accompanying Qinghe pushed her way inside. Qinghe's face was deathly pale, nearly collapsing. Xia Huijin, heartbroken, steadied her. He let her lean into his embrace. I told you before, now that you're carrying a child, you needn't pay her respects anymore. Qinghe lifted her head, her gaze toward me brimming with undisguised triumph. Without a word, the old nurse's hand fell across Cilian's face. You insolent wretch! It's freezing outside. You deliberately shut the door when you saw the mistress arrive, risking the young master in her womb. Do you think you can bear the consequences? Cilian's face instantly swelled red, yet she fought back tears as she looked at me, signaling not to argue with Qinghe. Cilian was the maid I'd brought with me from my natal home as part of my dowry. On the surface, Qinghe was striking her, but in truth, she was striking my face. I steadied myself on the corner of the table and stood up. My voice was low but stern as I addressed the matron. Qinghe is but a lowly concubine. What kind of mistress does she think she is? You've been in this household for years, yet you show such ignorance of propriety. If word gets out, outsiders will say the young master's household lacks discipline. I turned to look at Xia Huijin. His lips were tightly pressed together as he averted his gaze, even though he was the heir apparent. Above him stood the prince and princess consort, and even the emperor and empress. Dowager, not a single action within the mansion could be hidden from them. After a moment of deep thought, he issued his command, "Bring her out." 20 strokes of the cane. The matron immediately knelt tremulously on the ground, yet she did not plead with Xia Huaijin. Instead, she crawled toward me on her knees. "Please spare my life, princess consort. This old servant was ignorant of the rules. Might you overlook this once?" Considering my faithful service to the crown prince for over 20 years, all eyes fell upon me. As if I were the one who ordered the matron's punishment. Qi Qinghe tugged at Xia Huaijin's sleeve, her eyes brimming with tears. "Your Highness, I'm certain sister didn't mean to harm me this time. She was only worried my child might usurp the position of heir. I will kneel and beg her forgiveness until she is satisfied." She made to kneel. Xia Huaijin clasped her shoulders tightly. My expression had grown grim. "Enough, Ming Zhaoxue. How long will this continue? Was all your gentle, virtuous demeanor as a Jiangnan maiden merely a facade to deceive me? I married Xia Huaijin upon reaching my coming-of-age ceremony. The customs of the north and south differed greatly, and I longed for my homeland. Upon learning this, Xia Huaijin spared no expense to build Tingluan Garden, filling it with magnolias and lotuses from my hometown. On the day it was completed, Xia Huaijin took me there and whispered in my ear, "Zhao Xue. Since the day I first saw you at 12, not a single day has passed without me missing you. Even then, I vowed, just as ancient lords kept their beauties in golden chambers, if I ever married you, I would build a splendid garden to cherish you. I suffer from consumption. 10 years of marriage have yielded no children. Having entered the royal family without bearing an heir, I have always felt deeply guilty." I urged Xia Huaijin to take several concubines, but Xia Huaijin said, "To spend my life with you is all I desire. If we grow old without children, we can adopt a royal heir to inherit our title." Yet this year, unexpectedly, I became pregnant. As autumn arrived, Xia Huaijin felt the baby's first movements. Overwhelmed with joy at becoming a father, he could scarcely contain his delight. He immediately packed for the hunting grounds, declaring that since the child would be born in winter, he would personally hunt a tiger to craft tiger head shoes for the newborn. At that moment, I marveled at how life was nearing perfection. I felt like the luckiest woman alive. Yet when Xia Huaijin returned, another woman accompanied him. He confessed he'd nearly lost his life to a tiger in the wild. It was Qi Qinghe's father who risked his life to save him. To repay this debt of gratitude, he brought Qi Qinghe back with him. The prince and princess gave her some silver, intending to send her away. Qi Qinghe knelt until her forehead bled. "I have no home to return to, Your Highness. I dare not ask for much. If I could stay and serve as a lowly maid, that would be enough." I felt truly sorry for her, an orphaned girl with nowhere to turn. Xia Huaijin had always been one to repay kindness and never set his heart on any other woman. So I spoke on his behalf, pleading with the prince and princess to let her stay at the crown prince's residence. But just the other day, Xia Huaijin told me that Qi Qinghe was carrying his child. He commanded me in a tone of absolute authority, "Qinghe bears my child. She cannot remain without status. She shall first be elevated to concubine. Should she bear a son, I will petition father and mother to grant her the title of secondary consort." All traces of his former gentleness and tenderness vanished. Imperial families and noble houses hold propriety above all. If I refuse, Qi Qinghe cannot become a concubine. Yet my health is fragile, and I am about to give birth. I have never been one to harbor resentment. Having another person to care for Xia Huaijin might not be so bad. But I never imagined Xia Huaijin would favor her to this extent. I twirled the fox fur cloak around my shoulders. It was made from a fox pelt Xia Huaijin personally hunted at the hunting grounds when he was 15. He personally hunted it down in the wild. Today, the fox fur remains as warm as ever. But the person before me now sent a chill deep into my heart. I summoned a servant. The rules of the crown prince's residence are strict. Do as the crown prince says. The matron seized the chaos to rise, lunging straight at me, accompanied by a sharp pain in my lower abdomen. I fainted. After an unknown span of time, I stirred from my haze. My hand instinctively sought my belly, the child remained. Opening my eyes, I found Xia Huijin standing vigil at my bedside. His eyes reddened. Silian brought me a bowl of steaming medicinal broth. He took it, scooped a spoonful, gently blew on it to cool it, then held it to my lips. That matron is a long-serving elder of the household. She certainly wouldn't have been instructed by Qinghe to do such a thing. Since the child is safe, let's put the past behind us. I turned my face away, not opening my mouth. He furrowed his brow. Is it too hot or too cold? He withdrew the spoon, took a sip of the herbal soup himself, and smiled with relief. The temperature is just right. All these years, I've fed you medicine this way, it should be fine. In an instant, his expression darkened. Then it softened again. Qinghe says bitter medicine is good for you. As the crown prince's consort, you can't be so delicate. Just endure it and drink it quickly. Ever since marrying into the crown prince's household, my medicinal soups had never ceased. Some to treat the root of my illness, others to regulate my fertility. Xia Huijin specifically instructed the household physician to add licorice to every one of my prescriptions. Before feeding me the medicine each time, he would add malt sugar as well. No matter how bitter the medicine, I would swallow it as if it were sweet. He always said that caring for me had become a habit in his life. But Qinghe's single sentence changed his habit. So people really do change, do they? I smiled bitterly inside, took the bowl, and drank it all in one gulp. Never had I tasted such a bitter medicinal broth. But compared to the bitterness in my heart, what did this matter? Seeing me finish the medicine, Xia Huijin exhaled deeply. The court physician says this pregnancy is progressing smoothly. One more dose of medicine, and you'll be safe. Seeing I didn't object, he added, I've instructed Silian to pack your belongings. Qinghe is magnanimous, allowing you to rest in the mansion for 2 more days. In 3 days, I'll send someone to escort you to the estate. The bowl in my hand shattered at the sound. Xia Huijin moved to examine my hand. Servants from Qinghe's quarters called out from the doorway. Your Highness. Lady Qi is in labor again. Xia Huijin hurried away with the physician, not looking back once. Only my hand remained frozen in midair. Silian watched me with deep concern. Miss, shall I inform the prince and princess? I shook my head. I'd longed to return to Jiangnan, to taste my mother's osmanthus cakes. But Xia Huijin was always consumed by official duties. He never found time to accompany me home, yet couldn't bear leaving me alone. The matter was shelved. Now, returning alone felt rather fitting. Still, some things couldn't remain unresolved. I rose, donned my fox fur robe, and went to Qinghe's courtyard. She lay on her side on the bed, clutching Xia Huijin's hand. Her voice choked with emotion. Your Highness, this abdominal pain isn't entirely my sister's fault. It's just that my child and I have weak destinies. Xia Huijin gently stroked her cheek, his face filled with adoration. What nonsense are you saying? You carry the child of the Xia family. How could a child of the Xia family have a weak destiny? Even Ming Xiaoxue, with her frail constitution, had a stable pregnancy. I will procure the finest herbs in the realm and summon the most renowned physicians to safeguard both you and the child. With that, they embraced and wept together. I placed my hand over my belly. The fetus seemed to sense its mother's resolve, stirring restlessly beneath my skin. Ever since learning of this pregnancy, I had instructed the court physician, no matter what, this child must be protected. This is Xia Huijin's only bloodline. I treasure him above all else. To protect this pregnancy, I've even risked harming myself. But now, Xia Huijin has another child. My child. He likely no longer cares. I gave a soft cough. Qi Qinghe frantically struggled to rise from Xia Huaijin's embrace. Please do not blame the crown prince. Sister. It was my own discourtesy. Xia Huaijin stood up, shielding Qi Qinghe behind him. You knew her zodiac sign clashed with yours. Did you deliberately come here to harm her? Qi Qinghe peered at me from behind Xia Huaijin. A flicker of a smile crossed her face, only to vanish into a sea of sorrow. Your Highness. I should never have harbored such hopes. Even if sister and I clash zodiac-wise, the one who should leave is me. I bowed slightly towards Xia Huaijin. As the crown prince's consort, it is my duty to ease my husband's burdens. The Empress Dowager sent word recently, offering to send me some premium donkey hide gelatin. I thought it would be excellent for Qinghe's pregnancy. Would you kindly sign the palace entry order? I'll send someone to fetch it immediately. Xia Huaijin's brows finally relaxed a little. Zhao Xue. It's truly wonderful that you think this way. One day, when Qinghe gives birth safely, we can all be reunited and live our lives together. It's getting late. Rest well. In 3 days, I shall personally see you off. With a flourish of his brush, he signed his name. I steadied my trembling hand, tucked the paper away, and concealed it within my sleeve. It was the divorce petition I had long prepared. The snow fell heavier. Xia Huaijin stayed the night at Qi Qinghe's quarters once more. Qi Qinghe nestled against Xia Huaijin's arm. Her voice was tender as water. This servant has been feeling the cold lately. If only I had a fox fur coat like my sister's. Then I wouldn't trouble your highness to keep me warm night after night. Xia Huaijin held Qi Qinghe close. The warm charcoal fire lulled him into drowsiness. He couldn't recall the last time he'd spent a night with Ming Zhaoxue. Qi Qinghe was right. Give her the fox fur coat, and she'd have no excuse to cling to him night after night. Then he could return to Ming Zhaoxue. He truly wanted to treat Ming Zhaoxue well. Yet somehow his words and actions never aligned. Perhaps it was because after Ming Zhaoxue became pregnant, she devoted most of her energy to protecting the fetus, neglecting him in the process. He often wondered, if he acted more selfishly, would Ming Zhaoxue pay more attention to him? Never mind that he'd apologize properly tomorrow. Ming Zhaoxue wouldn't leave for another 3 days. He still had 3 full days to spend with her. After escorting her to the estate outside the city, he'd visit her more often during his days off. Surely she'd understand. He yawned. What's so hard about that? When she comes to deliver the donkey hide gelatin tomorrow morning, I'll have her give it to you. With that, he fell into a deep sleep. Night had grown deep. Salian, the crown prince's consort's personal maid, announced their arrival at the gatehouse, entrusted by the crown prince. I've come to fetch donkey hide gelatin for Lady Qi. The gatekeeper yawned and opened the door. He didn't notice the swaying carriage. A figure had joined the journey, yet the carriage left the crown prince's residence, not heading toward the palace. Early the next morning, Xia Huaijin awoke to find Ming Zhaoxue absent. He flew into a rage, summoning the gatekeeper for answers. Has the maid sent from the crown prince's consort's quarters to fetch the donkey hide gelatin not returned yet? The gatekeeper was at a loss. Your highness, last night brought fierce winds and snow. That maid Salian hasn't returned all night. Could something have happened to her? Xia Huaijin's heart began to pound. Salian was Ming Zhaoxue's personal maid. Why would she be sent to fetch medicine? If anything happened to Ming Zhaoxue, she wouldn't even have someone to care for her. A sense of foreboding gripped Xia Huaijin as he hurried to Tinglan courtyard. Zhaoxue, are you all right? The courtyard stood utterly empty. Xia Huaijin strode into the bedroom. Everything was gone. Only the fox fur robe remained, neatly folded and placed upon the bed. Announce it at the gatehouse. Your highness, it's terrible. Officials report discovering a carriage that plunged off a cliff. It appears to belong to the crown prince's residence. Search. Search for her. Turn the entire capital upside down. Dig 3 feet into the earth if you must. Find my crown princess consort. Xia Huaijin's roar echoed from the crown prince's residence. I had already changed into nomadic attire and taken Salian out to buy fabric for the child's clothes. The truly wise hide in plain sight. With the child's birth imminent, even disguised, I couldn't evade the soldiers' questioning at the city gates. The crown prince's residence stood in the bustling marketplace. surrounded by numerous cloth and silk shops frequented by merchants from all regions. No one would bat an eye at two more foreigners appearing. The small shop I'd purchased on the street beforehand was perfect for me to await the birth in peace. The clatter of hooves and footsteps never ceased. The entire crown prince's residence, even the imperial capital guard, had been mobilized, searching along every direction from the city gates. Xia Huijin paced back and forth at the mansion's main gate, glancing repeatedly toward the direction where the soldiers returned. Onlookers had gathered in such numbers that the mansion was completely surrounded. Whispers spread among them. The crown prince and his consort had shared 10 years of deep affection. They had never spent a single day apart since their marriage. How could the consort bear to leave the crown prince? Rumor has it the crown prince favored his concubine over his wife, driving the crown princess to flee the city overnight. Caught in a blizzard, she likely met a grim fate. Xia Huijin's eyes burned crimson, his clothes disheveled, all traces of his usual noble demeanor gone. He grabbed a bystander by the collar. "You're lying. The crown prince's consort won't be harmed. My Zhao Shui won't be harmed." Qi Qinghe tried to approach and comfort him, but he shoved her away. Qi Qinghe fell to the ground, overcome by excruciating abdominal pain. A trickle of blood flowed from her lower body. "Your Highness. My child." Just then, the commander of the personal guards returned. Xia Huijin shot her a look of disgust. "Get out! If anything happens to Zhao Shui, I won't let you off." The commander reported. "Your Highness. We've confirmed the carriage at the cliff edge 30 li outside the city belongs to the crown prince's consort. There are skid marks at the cliff's edge. And we found this." The guard trembled as he presented an embroidered shoe, caked in mud and stained with darkened blood. The embroidery on the shoe was my favorite magnolia pattern. Xia Huijin recognized it as my shoe. According to nearby villagers, last night's blizzard was fierce, and the mountain paths were treacherously slippery. It seems. The commander's voice trailed off. The crown prince's consort may have met with an accident. Xia Huijin stared fixedly at the embroidered shoe, a strange guttural sound rising in his throat. Suddenly, he snatched the shoe from the guard's hands and clutched it tightly to his chest. "I want to see her alive. Or dead, but I must see her body." "No. She couldn't be dead. How could she be dead?" Before the words had fully left his mouth, Xia Huijin coughed up a mouthful of blood. Drops of crimson splattered onto the pristine snow. Ignoring it all, he mounted the commander's horse and galloped out of the city. 3 days later, Silian told me upon returning from buying vegetables. "I heard the crown prince went to the cliff where the carriage fell. He pushed aside the soldiers preparing to excavate, forbidding them to use tools, fearing they might damage your body. He dug with his bare hands in the snow for 3 days and nights straight, until his hands were raw and bleeding. I was embroidering a tiny garment for the unborn child." The needle paused, leaving a small puncture in the fabric. I gave a faint reply. He brought this upon himself. No need to tell me his news anymore. Then I resumed my swift needlework. But the news of the crown prince's consort fleeing overnight caused quite a stir. I still learned the aftermath through neighbors' gossip. Though Qi Qinghe lost her child, the crown prince's residence still needed someone to manage the household. She became the crown prince's secondary consort as she wished. Yet the crown prince never once set foot in her chambers again. The crown prince used the fox fur coat I left behind to erect a symbolic grave in Tinglan Garden. Whenever he thought of me, he blamed Qi Qinghe for the deaths of his first wife and legitimate son. He punished her by making her kneel before my symbolic grave for 3 days and nights straight. Xia Huijin ordered strict guards to watch over her. If the secondary consort fainted, they would splash water on her face to revive her. Continuing until the 3 days were complete. Qi Qinghe developed lasting health issues from this ordeal and could never bear children again. News of this incident eventually reached the emperor and the empress dowager. Prince Xia temporarily lost his influence in court. The aristocratic families began to distance themselves from the prince's residence. When the child was born, spring had already arrived. His eyes and brows resembled mine. But upon closer look, that high, straight nose and tightly pursed lips were the spitting image of Xia Huaijin. Still, he was now entirely my child. The child was unusually quiet and sensible, rarely crying or fussing. I named him Ming'an, wishing him a lifetime of peace and smooth sailing. 3 months after giving birth, Xilian and I planned to take her back to our hometown. On the day of departure, I saw Xia Huaijin standing before the carriage. He appeared utterly despondent, his left arm empty and bare. Xilian couldn't help but tell me. The crown prince had dug in the snow for 3 days and nights straight, freezing his hands, though treated with the finest ointments. Only his right hand was saved. A gentle breeze swept past, lifting my headscarf. Xia Huaijin's gaze fell in my direction. "Madam, have we met before?" I adjusted my headscarf and spoke the vernacular with practiced ease. A flicker of disappointment crossed Xia Huaijin's eyes. He turned away, dejected. I climbed into the carriage as the coachman cracked his whip to set off. As the carriage passed Xia Huaijin, he suddenly looked up. "Madam, do you have any cousins by marriage who hail from Jiangnan?" The clatter of hooves drowned out his voice. I swiftly departed the capital. Returning to my homeland, I longed for day and night. Back in Jiangnan, my parents learned of my situation. They only said, "As long as you're safe and sound." As a child, my embroidery skills were the finest among my sisters. Mother often praised my dexterity, saying the birds and flowers I embroidered seemed alive. Father claimed I inherited his business acumen, suited for commerce. Thus he funded my embroidery studio by the Qinhuai River, named Jinxian. I gathered women abandoned by their husbands, unable to support themselves, to work as embroiderers. To celebrate this new beginning, I took the name Lady Qinyan. In the back garden, I planted a magnolia tree, just like the one in Tinglan Manor. Only this time, it wasn't for remembrance, but as a reminder to myself. Some feelings, like the blooming season of magnolias, no matter how beautiful, will eventually fade. No one knew my origins, and that suited me perfectly. At first, business at Jinshechuan was slow, but my embroidery was exquisite and fairly priced, gradually earning a reputation. I personally greeted every customer, memorizing their preferences. Slowly, Jinshechuan gained fame among the noble ladies of Jiangnan. Within 3 years, I transformed a small embroidery workshop into the largest in Jiangnan. The name Lady Qinyan grew ever more renowned. One day, while reviewing accounts on the second floor of Jin's pavilion, Ender played quietly with her 9-ring puzzle nearby. The shopkeeper reported respectfully, "Madam, the newly arrived Su brocade has been stored in the warehouse." I nodded, about to give instructions, when suddenly I felt a burning gaze. Looking up, I saw a familiar figure standing outside the pavilion window. Xia Huaijin. He had grown noticeably thinner, his face gaunt and haggard, his clothes slightly disheveled. Those eyes fixed on me, filled with madness and obsession. I immediately ordered Xilian to take her out the back door. When he burst in, the guards I had summoned shielded me from behind. The moment our eyes met, I found myself amused. Xia Huaijin. With this expression of unwavering devotion, for whom was he putting on this show? His voice was hoarse as he reached out to grab me. "Zhao Xue. I knew you wouldn't die." The guard stepped forward immediately to separate us. "Your Excellency, please control yourself." I lowered my head and continued organizing the ledgers. "You've mistaken me for someone else. I am Qin Yan now." Xia Huaijin's gaze locked onto me, as if he wanted to devour me whole. "That child is our child, isn't it?" My smile grew even more distant. Your Excellency. You jest. My son, what business is he to you? Seeing his face turn instantly ashen, I suddenly felt pity. I stepped forward, lowering my voice. Your lawful wife. Ming Xiaoxue, did she not perish in that blizzard 3 years ago? With that, I turned and departed. As my skirt brushed the threshold, it felt like severing the last thread of connection. The new governor's wife awaited me personally to deliver the goods. Stepping into the carriage, I heard Xia Huijin roar behind me. Xiaoxue. I'm sorry. I know I was wrong. I'll make it up to you. The carriage curtain fell, blocking out his voice. Xia Huijin began staying long-term at an inn by the Qinhuai River, guarding the entrance to Jingxi Pavilion day after day. Sometimes from the second floor, I could see his figure standing beneath the willow trees. His expression was as forlorn as an abandoned kitten. Anur noticed him too. Mother, why does that uncle stand there every day? He's waiting for someone. Who? Someone who will never return. Later, Xia Huajin vanished for a while. Just when I thought he'd finally given up, the innkeeper of Jinshexuan suddenly told me in a mysterious tone. Something's happened at the Prince of Jing's mansion. I raised an eyebrow. Oh? Though business inevitably involves dealing with officials, I've never had any interest in their intrigues. The proprietor, however, was brimming with excitement. He said that after Prince Xie returned to the capital, he personally uncovered the truth about the past. That Qi Qinghe was never the daughter of a hunter at all. The tiger encounter during the prince's hunt was deliberately orchestrated by the Jing Wangfu. I knew the Jing prince's mansion and Prince Xia had always been at odds, but I never imagined they'd resort to using a beauty as a weapon. That Qi Qinghe, according to the law, she should have just been expelled from the crown prince's residence. But Crown Prince Xie insisted on demoting her to a slave, even carving the character for slave onto her face. Unable to bear that life, she threw herself into a well and took her own life. I slowly smoothed the edge of the ledger page. The Crown Prince Xie instructed you to tell me this. Didn't he? The shopkeeper twitched his lips but said nothing. Even if the Jing prince's mansion schemed relentlessly, Xia Huijin remained unmoved. That alone prevented today's outcome. I immediately settled the shopkeeper's monthly wages. You may leave. You need not work here anymore. At dusk, Xia Huijin, his body weary, blocked my path with his remaining arm. His eyes were bloodshot as he handed me a stack of documents. Xiaoxue. I've uncovered everything. Qi Qinghe's pregnancy resulted from her using an aphrodisiac on me. That wet nurse was her accomplice. And I cut him off. Your Highness, what does this have to do with me? He froze in place, as if doused with cold water. But there was a misunderstanding between us. I met his gaze directly. There was no misunderstanding. Had you not approached Qi Qinghe, her aphrodisiac incense would never have affected you. You chose to believe her over me, that is the truth. You sent me to the estate just before my delivery, that too is the truth. I know I was wrong. Xiaoxue. I corrected him. I am Lady Qinyan. Your Highness, please return. As I turned away, I heard his stifled sobs. The explanations he once craved now sounded utterly meaningless. Like soup boiled too long, no amount of seasoning could restore its original flavor. When Anur grew older, he began asking about his father. All the other children have fathers. Why doesn't Anur? I hesitated, unsure how to explain. The little one wrapped his arms gently around my neck and whispered softly. Anur has mother. That's enough. Yet his gaze toward Xia Huijin grew increasingly curious. That day, his ball rolled to Xia Huijin's feet. From afar, I watched their first face-to-face encounter. Xia Huijin crouched down, trembling as he picked up the ball with extreme care. Uncle. Who are you? Xia Huajin choked on his words. His gaze fixated greedily on Enur's small face. I immediately stepped forward, shielding Enur behind me. Xia Huajin looked up at me, his eyes filled with pleading. Zhao Xue. Let me see him occasionally. Okay? No. My refusal was firm. As I carried Enur away, the child pressed against my shoulder and whispered, Mother. That uncle was crying. I held him tighter. Xia Huajin. If you'd known this would happen, why did you do it in the first place? A horse galloped toward us at breakneck speed. The rider shouted. The horse is spooked. Everyone, get out of the way. Holding Enur, my mind went blank for a moment. I tried to move, but the horse charged wildly. There was nowhere to go. Finally, I took a deep breath and stepped to the left. At the last possible moment, Xia Huajin had already charged in front of me and Enur. He tried to shield us with his body. The rider managed to rein in the horse just in time. The horse's hooves kicked up, narrowly missing Xia Huajin's face. Unconcerned with his own safety, Xia Huajin's eyes were filled with worry. Zhao Xue. Are you and Enur okay? I sidestepped him, clutching Enur as I prepared to leave. A scholar leapt down from the horse's back. Madam, I beg your pardon. The horse was startled. Are you and the young master unharmed? A trace of fear lingered in my heart, but seeing the sincerity in the scholar's apologetic eyes, I could say little more. I gave a slight nod and turned to leave. Xia Huajin seized the scholar's sleeve. You nearly killed my wife and child. Is a casual apology enough? I smiled. Your Highness oversteps. We are strangers, I am not your wife. Though Xia Huajin lacked an arm, his long-trained strength remained astonishing. As they wrestled, they tumbled into the roadside river. I swiftly grabbed a bamboo pole from the roadside, intending to rescue him. As Xia Huajin looked at me with eyes full of hope, I caught the scholar's flushed face out of the corner of my eye and extended the pole toward him instead. Xia Huajin's eyes reddened. Zhao Xue. You'd rather save him than me? I replied. The prince is perfectly capable of saving himself. Why should I interfere? With that, I turned and walked away with Enur. That night, likely from the shock, Enur developed a fever. The doctor's needles brought no relief. I sat by his bedside, watching his little face burn crimson, my heart twisting in pain. Father, the child murmured in his sleep. Xia Huajin burst into the room. Enur, father is here. I tried to stop him. He suddenly knelt on the ground. Zhao Xue. I wronged you in the past. But now, can you let me save Enur? I pressed my lips together, unwilling to have any further connection with him. Xia Huajin swore to the heavens. I promise, I will stay far away from you and Enur from now on. I will never disturb you again. This time, I did not stop him. Fine. You'd better keep your word. Xia Huajin paused, then pulled a pill from his robe. This is a precious pill bestowed by the late emperor upon my father during his campaigns to quell the war. It treats high fever and delirium. After Enur took it, her condition showed clear signs of improvement. That night, Xia Huajin stayed by Enur's window, watching over her until dawn. Later, Xia Huajin truly kept his word. He never troubled us again. He shed the robes of a crown prince and lived as a commoner. He bought a house across from mine and watched over her daily. When we occasionally crossed paths, he honored his promise and never intruded. Half a year later, I suddenly received the emperor's decree of an imperial match. My husband was the newly crowned top scholar. Qing Yanshu, the eunuch delivering the decree, smiled as he asked me, Madam, are you willing? Minister Qing is a man of exceptional talent and a favorite of His Majesty, but I had no recollection of ever meeting anyone named Qing Yanshu. Seeing my puzzled expression, the eunuch added, Minister Qing said that half a year ago, he was deeply moved by your rescue of him. When His Majesty asked what his wish was, he requested that the emperor grant him marriage to you. This familiar scenario again. I never want another man to seek my hand out of gratitude. Before I could respond, Xia Huajin burst in. With utter disregard for imperial decorum, he knelt before the eunuch. Your Majesty, please convey this. Minister Xia and Lady Ming remain husband and wife. the hall erupted in commotion. He turned to me, his eyes burning with desperate madness. Xiaoshui, I don't wish to trouble you further, but I cannot bear to see you marry another. I watched this man, once proud and arrogant beyond measure, now kneeling humbly before everyone. Had he pleaded thus 3 years ago, I might have softened. Alas, it is too late. I bowed respectfully to the eunuch. This humble maiden thanks His Majesty for his kindness, but I have already divorced him and wish not to remarry. Xia Huijin's pupils dilated. Xiaoshui, when did you divorce me? To speak thus is treason. I produced the divorce decree signed in Xia Huijin's own hand that year. His vision darkened, and he fainted. From that day on, Xia Huijin fell gravely ill. It took a full half-year before he began to recover. When we met again, he had wasted away beyond recognition. Xia Huijin couldn't help but ask me, "You saved him back then?" He was refined and courteous, with boundless promise. Why? After he passed the imperial examination as top scholar and sought your hand, did you still refuse to marry him? I stopped in my tracks and turned to face him. Because I only wish to be Ming Xiaoshui, not some crown prince's consort, not some top scholar's wife, just Ming Xiaoshui. No one is bound to another simply because of a debt of life-saving grace. We are both independent individuals. Xia Huijin stood frozen in place, as if seeing me for the first time. The next day, I hosted a banquet at Jinshi Pavilion. Before all the prominent figures of Jiangnan, I solemnly declared, 3 years ago, Ming Xiaoshui died. The person standing here today is Qing Yan, who has built her life with her own hands. My gaze swept over Xia Huijin in the corner as I declared, word by word, a broken mirror cannot be mended, spilled water cannot be retrieved. From this day forward, my life holds only 2 purposes, raising my young son and building my enterprise. Under the gaze of the crowd, I led Honor away without a single glance back. After that, Xia Huijin sank deeper into a life of despair. Word came that the old Prince Xia had passed away. The princess consort dispatched several groups of people urging him to return to the capital to inherit the title. He drove them all away. Without Xiaoshui, what use is this so-called broken prince title to me? His younger half-brother inherited the title instead. The princess consort fell ill with rage and severed all ties with Xia Huijin. Xia Huijin drifted between moments of madness and lucidity. He would mutter to himself, "My lawful wife is Ming Xiaoshui. My son is Ming'an." Children passing by would often mock him. This Qingming festival, I saved enough silver, and Honor has reached the age for formal education. I sold Jinshi Pavilion, intending to take Honor back to my maternal home in Jiangnan to find a good tutor. As the carriage left the city, I saw Xia Huijin standing at the gate, holding a budding magnolia blossom. It was the very same variety he had planted for me in Tinglan Courtyard all those years ago. Xiaoshui. He called my name softly, offering me the magnolia. Your favorite. I looked at his hands, scarred and weathered. I'd heard those wounds flare up every winter. Yet my heart remained utterly still. The carriage curtain fell. I told the driver. My Tinglan garden now seemed even more desolate. Honor nestled against me. Mother, that uncle has been standing there the whole time. I gently stroked my child's hair. Yes. But he came too late. 3 years are too short. The rest of life too long. The Ming's Hakshu who needed him had long perished in that great snowfall 3 years ago. And now I have Honor, my career, a whole new life. That is enough. The car drove toward the spring of Jiangnan, where magnolias bloomed profusely along the roadside. I clasped Honor's hand and gazed into the distance. From now on, we shall part ways with mountains and rivers between us. Let us not speak of each other's length or shortness. The end.